Hello, my name is Eric, and welcome to this week's video lesson. Today's topic is called Where Do We Live? So today's topic is taken from Unit 3.5 in your book. So if you have your book, you can follow on page 54 and 55. Again, if you don't have your book, all of the information will be here on the screen for you. So let's start with this map. This is a map of the USA. What information does it give us? What do the colors on the map mean? Are they temperature, population, or mountains? So do the dark red areas indicate a higher temperature, or more people, or does it show us where the mountains are? Well, the correct answer is population. So population is the number of people living in certain areas. So on this map, the dark red areas indicate places that are very crowded. They have many people. And the light areas are places that have few people. Look at these two photographs. What would you say is the main difference between these two places? They're very different, right? Which place would you prefer to live in, and why? Why do you think so many people live in place A? Well, we're going to answer all of these questions today. So let's look at our goals for today's lesson. We want to understand the meaning of population density and population distribution. We want to know the difference between a rural and an urban area. We want to understand the factors involved in rural to urban migration. That means, why are people moving from rural areas to urban areas? And finally, to understand how the physical landscape affects population distribution. So there's a lot of new words in here. Let's make sure you understand them before we get into the lesson. So you're going to write these new words in your notebook because they will be important in your studies. First one, population simply means the number of people living in an area. So we can talk about the population of the world, the population of a country, the population of a city. Population distribution. This means the way people are spread out over the earth or in a country. Population density is the average number of people living in an area per square kilometer. Now, you'll see in our book, it uses the term SQKM. This means square kilometer, which is the same as km squared, or kilometer squared. So both mean a square of land 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer. The term densely populated describes places where many people live. These places have a high population density. They are crowded. The opposite is sparsely populated. It describes places where few people live. These places have a low population density. So here are some examples using these terms. Population. The world's population is around 7.8 billion people. The UK has a population of 67 million people. Population distribution. This map shows how people are spread out across the world. For example, we can see more people live in Asia than in Australia. We can see more people live in Mexico than in the USA. Population density. This map also shows how many people live in each country per square kilometer. For example, India has a population density of over 250 people per square kilometer. So we can say India is densely populated. Canada has a population density of under 10 people per square kilometer. We can say Canada is sparsely populated. Now, of course, in any country, some places are more crowded than others. In Canada, cities like Vancouver or Toronto are very crowded. But up in the north, there's very few people. So on average, it has 10 people per square kilometer. So we're using the UK again as our example. So this is in our book, Unit 3.5. So it says here, the population of a place means the number of people who live in it. The population of the UK is around 64 million. Population density is the average number of people living in an area per square kilometre. The map below shows how this changes around the British Isles. So there's a key beside the map. It shows us the darker the shade, the more people per square kilometre, and the palest or the lightest areas are the least crowded. So we see the dark orange areas have over 250 people per square kilometre. The medium orange colour is between 50 to 250, and the lightest colour is under 50 people per square kilometre. So, using that key and the map, let's answer a question. So looking at the map, it has letters marked on it. What can you say about the population density at X, Y, and Z? You're going to use the term people per square kilometre in your answer. So pause the video now, and when you have your answer, we will check. Okay, have you finished? So X has a population density of 50 to 250 people per square kilometre. Y has a population density of under 50 people per square kilometre. And Z has a population density of over 250 people per square kilometre. Now, an interesting fact, the most crowded city in the world is Manila, the capital of the Philippines. It has a population density of 41,500 people per square kilometre. That's 10 times more crowded than where you live. Now let's look at question B. The population density around Y is low. We see it has only under 50 people per square kilometre. So using the image on page 46, try to explain why. Let's have a look at that image. So we see Y on the first map. So if we match that to the place on the second image, what can we infer to try to explain why the population is so low here? So you're going to write this answer in your notebook, and it's all about the terrain. The second image shows us where the mountains are, and if we look at Y, we see it is a mountainous area, and it's hard to earn a living here. Mountainous areas are not suitable for farming or many other activities. They are also difficult to access, and they have a harsher climate. In general, people tend to settle on lower, flatter land. Let's check some vocabulary in this paragraph. Mountainous is an adjective that means an area that has many mountains. To earn a living means to make enough money from working to live. And harsh is an adjective that means uncomfortable or unpleasant. So up in the mountains, they have a harsh climate. It's very cold, windy, possibly snowy in winter. Also, most cities are built on low flat land. The cities we live in today began as villages in the past, and they grew over time. When they were first started, people wanted good flat land, which is better for farming and building on. They also built near the sea or on a river for fishing, water supply, trade and transport. So low flat land also has a more comfortable climate for people to live in. Now we have the terms urban and rural. So look at photo A. It shows a rural area. A rural area is mainly countryside, but it may have villages and small towns. Picture B shows an urban area. Urban areas are built up. They include larger towns and cities. This example is Birmingham. The pie chart shows us that over 19% of the UK's population live in rural areas. That means that 81% live in urban areas or towns and cities. What about you? Do you live in an urban or a rural area? So now it's your turn. Look at this map again. Which area is more crowded, Japan or China? Well, the answer is Japan is more crowded than China. We see that Japan has a population density of over 250 people per square kilometer, whereas China only has 101 to 250 people per square kilometer. Some of you may be confused because we know that China has the highest population in the world, so how can Japan be more crowded than China? Because population density means the number of people per square kilometer. China has a much larger area than Japan. So even though China has many more people, it has more room for everybody. We calculate population density by dividing the number of people by the land area. So for example, Japan has 126 million people. I'm going to divide that by the land area. The land area of Japan is 377,915 kilometers squared. So when I calculate that, I get 337,915 people per square kilometer. So that is the population density of Japan. If you did the same calculation for China, we would see China has a much larger area, so we will get a lower population density. So in your notebook, I want you to define an urban area and a rural area. So an urban area is a built-up area such as a town or a city. And a rural area is an area of countryside. It may have villages and small towns. So look at this pie chart. Which one of the following statements is true? A. Most people in the UK live in the countryside. B. About half of the people live in towns and cities. Or C. Nearly 1 in 5 people in the UK live in rural areas. I'm going to give you 10 seconds to choose your answer. Okay, and the correct answer is C. Nearly 1 in 5 people in the UK live in rural areas. So almost 20% live in the countryside and about 80% live in the cities. And it's not just in the UK. All over the world, more and more people are living in urban areas. So why do you think more and more people are living in urban areas? Why do people choose to move from the countryside to the cities? So you will draw a mind map like this, again in your notebook. Why do people live in urban areas? So I have a couple of ideas for you, but you will do the rest by yourself. One is there are more job opportunities. So in cities, there's a lot more jobs, and we can usually earn more money here. There's more entertainment as well in cities. So I want you to complete this mind map in your notebook. Add as many ideas as you can. When you've finished, we will review. So the main points today: population distribution is how the people are spread out across the world or across the country. Population distribution is uneven. Some places have more people and some places have less. Population density is the average number of people per square kilometer. We calculate it by dividing the number of people by the land area. Urban areas are towns and cities. They have a higher population density. We can say that they are more densely populated or more crowded. Rural areas are countryside areas, and they have lower population density. We can say that they are more sparsely populated. They have few people. In more developed countries, more of the population lives in urban areas. Many people live in urban areas because there are more job opportunities, better quality and choice of education, more entertainment. There's more people to meet, and there are better services. And finally, the physical landscape affects where people live. Most cities are built on low, flat land. Cities began as villages and grew over time. When they were first started, people wanted good flat land, which is better for farming and building on. They are also built near the sea or on a river for fishing, water supply, trade, and transport. Low flat land also has a more comfortable climate. So that is the end of today's lesson. Thank you for your attention, and you'll see me again in next week's video. So goodbye and have a nice day.